Hello everyone. Welcome again to another of our talks on the 12-step program and on the 12-step way of life. My name is Turlock, and the last talk we had was on spiritual awakening. We said there was three things: spiritual awakening, spiritual experience, and the spiritual life, which we talk about when we talk about the 12-step program. They are intimately connected with the 12-step program. But a lot of people don't understand that there are substantial differences between these three things. The spiritual awakening, as we said in our last talk, is simply our spirit awakening to God, awakening to what is going on around us. An addict or a selfish person, by definition, lives a self-centered life. But when our spirit begins to awaken, we start to consider others and to consider the effects that our life and our way of life has on other people. So we talked about that in the last talk. In this talk, we're going to talk about the spiritual experience. Now, the spiritual awakening concerns us. Our spirit is awakening. A spiritual experience concerns something else out there, because we experience what is outside of ourselves. So when we begin to talk about a spiritual experience, we are talking about what is happening after our spirit awakenings. The real beginning of the spiritual experience in the program for most of us is step 3, when we make a decision to hand our life and our will and our life over to the care of God. Now, once we do that, we are inviting God into our lives. So we begin to have an experience of God. But there is a very essential component of experience, and it is something we have to take into consideration. The essential component of experience that we're talking about is reflection. You see, during our addiction, we had many experiences, most of them bad, while we were practicing our addictions. Or if you're a Christian living a life of selfishness, we have experiences, but we don't reflect upon what is happening. That is what leads people who look bewildered at the addict and say, "Will he never learn?" Because we don't reflect. We just experience. The component that leads to spiritual growth is reflection. What happened? What is it's like, and what has happened now? What is like now? What it was like, what happened, and what is like now, as we say in the 12-step program. So if we had to reflect on something, so if I ask God for help when I'm coming into a situation, I'm going to meet someone, and I'm a bit nervous about meeting them, and I ask God for help, and I do that thing that addicts should always do, say a prayer, and I go and meet the person. Then after that, I come back and I reflect upon what happened, because it is in the reflection that we learn. Now, how many times have us people in 12-step fellowships gone to a meeting feeling bad, sitting there and saying, "There's something I want to share," and we share it. And immediately after the meeting we come out and we feel better because we have shared it, and other people have shared back about their experience. But unfortunately, many of us leave it at that. And we do that while we're serving our apprenticeship, while we're learning about how the program works. But we get to know that we learn from our experience, or as we say in the program, experience and its lesson. If you're a Christian and talking to people will say to you, a good minister or a good priest will say to you eventually, "What have you learned from that experience?" So it's the same for us. We are seeking to learn from our experiences. And then we experience, and we reflect upon what we experience. As addicts and as Christians, We are reflecting upon what God is doing in our life. Now, this is not something we do one afternoon a week. That is why step 10, continue to take personal inventory. We are constantly reflecting. We should be reflecting as soon as possible after the event. So if I go to meet someone that I don't want to talk to, and it turns out okay, then I need to reflect upon why the situation that I thought was going to be bad has suddenly turned out to be fine. And then we learn. We look at the lesson that we are taught. How many times have we gone to meet someone, expecting a confrontation, and the very fact that we go to meet them diffuses the whole situation? We should look at that and say the openness of us, our willingness to go and talk to someone before we have even spoken, is an attitude of humility, is an attitude of seeking to sort things out, and the other people respond to that. But if we don't reflect upon what's happening, we are never going to learn. A spiritual experience comes about as the result of reflecting upon what God is doing in our life. The Spirit we are talking about, and Bill uses a capital S for Spirit in the Big Book, which is the way Christians refer to the Holy Spirit, the second person of the Blessed Trinity. The Spirit that we are talking about is the Spirit of God. So we asked God for help, and God sends His Spirit to come into the situation and to bring healing. What we are about in the 12-step program is the healing of our psyche, is the healing of our soul, the healing of the mental twist that's within us that causes us to feel problems with the world. The 12-step program is about spiritual healing. Believe it or not, and this is never discussed at a 12-step meeting, the traditions are there to help us deal with the world. But we will come on to the traditions later. But the program brings about spiritual healing, healing of the psyche. It also brings about physical healing because we stop our addiction. But after the addiction has ended, we need to enter into a period of spiritual healing. And the greatest necessity for growth in the program is constant reflection, reflecting upon what God is doing in our life. We reflect upon our experience. We learn from our experience. How many of us, myself included, have gone to 12-step meetings for years, saying the same things over and over again, because we never reflected upon our experience. When I reflect upon my experience, I see where I made mistakes, I see where I could have improved myself, and I see where things could have gone better. And then I learn from that experience. Basically, we're back to that thing, experience and its lesson. So if we are learning, if we're reflecting, we will continue to learn. In our next talk, we'll talk about the spiritual life. But I'd like you to grasp that the spiritual awakening, the spiritual experience, and the spiritual life are three separate things. They are not one thing. They are three separate parts of the same overall experience. But the spiritual awakening is different from the spiritual experience, and the spiritual experience is different from the spiritual life. I think I've said enough for today, but thank you very much for listening to me. God bless. Bye.